Greetings and felicitations.
Hip, hip, hurrah, tally-ho.
Hey, my little Georgia Peach.
Hey, Puddin'.
Okay, ready to talk about some TV shows from 1968?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready, even though I wasn't born yet.
There were some great ones, and we grew up in an era where reruns were so common after school that we're familiar with a lot of programming from 1968.
Oh, yeah, I watched a lot of it in the afternoons.
All right, so let's talk about some of the events that happened in 1968. What about in the world of Star Trek? Something groundbreaking happened there.
Well, on November 22nd, William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols shared the first interracial kiss on TV. Now, that was the episode Plato's Stepchildren. Now, you know it's touted as the first interracial kiss, but really...
I say the first kiss on American television between a black woman and a white man.
Right.
But I view I Love Lucy as interracial.
Exactly.
I mean, there have been other instances, but anytime you put a black person involved, there are some people that freak out over it.
And there is something that you can look up on Wikipedia about first interracial kiss, and it does come up with several different things. But yeah, this was the first between a white man and a black woman, so yes.
And it was of note because there were certain stations that refused to air this episode.
And what do people think of it now? I mean, it's more common now, so we're just like, okay, yeah, that was on Star Trek. It was one of those episodes.
Interesting story behind it, because it was Captain Kirk kissing Uhura, but what was the original script? It was Mr. Spock kissing Uhura.
Oh, are you sure it wasn't Spock kissing Nurse Chapel? Which
That's how they had to
I mean,
switch it to.
Yeah,
Once William Shatner heard that he was going to make television history, that is Leonard Nimoy, he went to the writers, directors, he just said, we're going to switch roles. I need to kiss Nichelle.
I mean, I think it's great that William Shatner was that brave. I mean, to do something that was that controversial back then. So he did it.
He's Captain Kirk.
I know.
I mean, he's going after green girls. This is nothing to him.
But the thing is, when you watch this scene, if you watch closely, it looks like they're not really kissing. They have their lips pursed a certain way. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really, the camera angle does not show their lips actually touching.
It's
either.
not a hardcore kiss.
Right.
Well, another thing that happened is because they had to take multiple takes, and they did some takes with alluding to a kiss, not even going near each other, and then one where they are kissing. Do you remember what William Shatner did to make sure that the ones that them not kissing didn't show up? He started going cross-eyed, so he knew that when they would do reviews of those scenes, they'd have to edit those ones out because he cross-eyed himself. So they were forced to use the kissing cut.
That's interesting. And the thing is, in the cut they used, you could see his eyes looking up, which was great acting. I mean, because it, he was being forced. They were both being forced to do this.
It wasn't a natural kiss. That's another thing. They were puppets.
Yeah, it's strange. That's the only way they could get the kiss in, was to have them be forced to do it in the episode, in the storyline.
All right, another event in 1968 that we're big fans of.
Elvis Presley's Elvis airs on NBC.
Often known as the Elvis 68 Comeback Special.
Which you said you watched later on.
When it came on repeats, my mother loved Elvis. So I remember watching that as a kid. And I loved the part. Well, it was in two parts. You had multiple parts actually. Primarily you had the part with him in the white suit singing gospel songs, with the giant Elvis logo behind him. I mean, that in itself is iconic. And then you had him come out with the black leather suit. And I thought that was fantastic.
He was very cool looking in that suit. I mean, everything he wore in that show was awesome.
Yeah, it was. When we toured Graceland, we got to see those suits. And it's wonderful to see the contrast. The brilliant white to go against the stark black. Elvis was back in 68. Because we knew he took a big sabbatical from being in the Army.
Yeah, that was his comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And so he had to reinvent himself for a new generation. And I think he did a wonderful job.
And the next thing of interest to us is Apollo 8 broadcasted to Earth, relaying a report that there is a Santa Claus, really, and reading a passage from the book of Genesis. So that was what they did, which was pretty neat back then.
It was during the space race. So This whole era of NASA I find so fascinating because doing things that generations earlier can only dream of, and they did it in such a short period of time.
And no one ever knew it could happen. And it relates to Star Trek. I mean, like, because people weren't sure that Star Trek had happened, but then now in real life we've got this. Humans are going into space.
By this time, nearly 200 million households owned television sets. 78 million were in the United States. So more and more people were getting glued to television. Let's talk about this TV guide that we have in our collection. It is the cover date August 24th through 30th, 1968. Has DeForest Kelley, William Shatner, and Leonard Nimoy on the cover. Also, How Violence on Television Affects Your Children by Dr. Joyce Brothers. 2 articles that are worthy of discussing.
Now about this cover, I mean, it's a picture that's sort of like a blacklight picture or
like
something.
A negative.
Like a negative. I mean, I was wondering if maybe they did this because they couldn't really get the permission to use the actual faces, and that's why they kind of had shadows over their faces.
It's kind of an odd cover, specifically because during this time period they were doing such unique covers with regard to artwork and more brilliant stylizing. To have something that's monochromatic, it's not really my favorite. Obviously, we have it in our collection because it's Star Trek.
It's just interesting to look at. I mean, in some ways it is artistic, but it's very dark and yeah, and you wonder why they did it.
Especially since the article is solely about DeForest Kelley. I think I'd rather see a picture of his face zoomed in.
It would have made more sense, but I guess they thought having the big 3 on the cover would have sold more copies.
Makes sense.
So, they interviewed DeForest Kelley in this issue, and the name of the article is, Where is the Welcome Mat? DeForest Kelley sometimes fears he's Star Trek's forgotten star. Oh, yeah, and this is saying about how he was sort of guest star status on the show. For the first season, he wasn't in the opening credits with Shatner and Nimoy, but then they did add him to the opening credits for the second season. But he said he still had to fight to get his name out there. And he was always a little taken aback at how, he said, like, at how he was treated, how he was kind of treated as a second-rate co-star on the show.
Well, we know that when Star Trek started out, the focus was supposed to be William Shatner. And then the fan mail came in, and the focus was Mr. Spock. By the second and third season, they started doing more with other characters, and Dr. McCoy became part of the Trinity.
He became a valuable part of the show. I mean, but yeah, it started out with, I mean, it was made so that Kirk could be the star, and he always was. But Leonard Nimoy just became so popular, and that's the reason they started writing it where saying Kirk and Spock were best friends. That was a way for Kirk to kind of hone in on Spock's popularity.
And I love the character of Dr. McCoy because he was the heart of the show. So many times where Captain Kirk was pure action, Mr. Spock, pure logic. He was the soft spot, Dr. McCoy, between the two, and it rounded out everything.
McCoy was the emotional one. And yes, I always liked him. He was funny. He was the humorous one. And the way he played off Spock was so good. The way that McCoy is the one who really knew what was behind Spock. The one that said, you have a human half too, and you're afraid your human half will come out. I mean, McCoy had Spock's number, but they were friends. I mean, it was great to see that, and the way, and sometimes there were ones that focused on how much they really cared about each other.
What'd you think about the life of DeForest Kelley as was brought out in this article? Coming in from Georgia, were you familiar with that area that he grew up in, Conyers, Georgia? Yeah,
now Conyers is actually, I think it is considered a part of Metro Atlanta. It's on the east side of Atlanta. And yeah, that is interesting that he grew up there. I I guess that the town itself might not be that big, but it's still there, like pretty close to the big city if you want to go do something in Atlanta. But yeah, and it says he was a preacher's son. His father was a Baptist minister. And that is pretty common in the South. I mean, you meet a lot of preachers' children in the South.
said he tried to get into acting, and it took him a while to really find his groove. And come to think of it, the westerns that I've seen him in, he wasn't young. He was on the older side. So he got into the field later on than the other Star Trek actors.
That is what the article mentions too, because it says he was over 40 when he started on Star Trek, and he had already done so many westerns, and he usually played the bad guy, which is funny.
And it's hard to imagine because he's such a nice guy on Star Trek.
He is. Yeah, it's just amazing, but he's such a good actor.
I like how it said he's married and he has a pet turtle.
Oh yeah, and there was actually a picture of that. Yeah, there's a picture of him with the turtle.
And the turtle, he says, roams around his backyard.
Yeah, that was funny. I guess it's fenced in so that the turtle doesn't leave, or maybe it doesn't want to leave. I don't know. And he was married to the same person for a long time. They got married before Star Trek, and they were still married at the time he passed away.
And you know, he had a ranch home in Southern California, and even when he made it big in the movies, he still stayed in the same home. He felt comfortable there with his wife. So, I mean, he's really a down-to-earth guy. He never let fame get to his head.
That's just amazing that he never turned Hollywood in that sense. He was a down-to-earth guy, a lot like Dr. McCoy in that way. And McCoy was from the South, too.
Did you ever get to meet him at a convention?
I did see him at a couple of cons, yes. And I always thought he was a nice guy. He was funny and very, very open. I know one time when he was at the 30th anniversary con in Huntsville, and he was on stage first, and then he introduced Shatner and Nimoy. But they gave him the intro to read, so he was reading this and said something like, and they both recorded albums. And then he paused and he goes, singing?
He's the only one that didn't write an autobiography out of the main cast of Star Trek. He didn't have a singing album, whereas others did. He was far more reserved out of the main Star Trek cast.
He didn't just take any job just for the money. I know I read, I think it was in Starlog, that he really, he was happy just doing nothing, so he could just sit back and relax most of the time, and I guess live off the movie royalties. On New Year's Day, he still cooks black-eyed peas with red-eyed gravy for luck, which is a Southern tradition. And he does say that his father, being a preacher, was sort of the inspiration for him becoming an actor, because he could see his father get up there and preach a sermon to people. And his father did rehearse just like actors do. And so you kind of see it as being able to influence all of these people.
I like how the article closes out in saying, when his name ran for the first time this year in a TV Guide crossword puzzle, his wife clipped the page and framed it to hang on the wall. It's not an Oscar or an Emmy, says D. Kelly, but to an actor, it's something.
Yeah, I mean, it's recognition, which is what he wants, and he will always be remembered.
There's also an article that's of interest to those that are into science fiction, horror, fantasy, and comic books. It's by Dr. Joyce Brothers, entitled, Are the Seeds of Violence Nurtured Through the Public's Airwaves? A noted psychologist surveys conflicting opinions on the subject now being studied by a presidential commission. Now, when I was growing up, there is always some controversy with programming and how it affects kids' minds, whether it warps them. This has been going on for decades. What'd you think about this article?
Well, this article it doesn't really draw a conclusion. So it's written by Dr. Joyce Brothers, and we know that she's a known psychiatrist. She actually played herself on a lot of TV shows and was on talk shows. Now what she does in this article is just quote a lot of studies. She makes a good point that all these studies contradict each other. And one will say one thing and one will say something else. So what can you believe? I kind of think it shows how maybe it just shows that children are different, because different children get different things from watching TV. And she does say that maybe it just comes from the parents instead of the children, and that's a good point, too.
It also has some quotes with Dr. Wertham, so we know that he wrote that book, Seduction of the Innocent, that caused a lot of comic books to be banned in the 1950s, especially EC horror comics. The Comics Code Authority came in because of that book, because the idea of kids are getting too much violence on television and in comic books and in fantasy media, so it has to stop. And this type of thing just kept going on and on over the years. Do you remember the Dungeons and Dragons craze of the 70s and 80s?
Yes.
Heavy metal banning. I mean, every generation has some kind of banning of media to say it's the media's fault, it's not parenting, it's not the child. So it's an interesting...
It's something that's bad for kids. Yeah.
Exactly. And I like some of the points that were brought out in here that said, throughout history, there have always been wars. There's always been bloodshed. This is way before television.
There's always this stuff out there, but how much of it reaches children? I mean, these days we have the parental guides, we have parental lockouts for kids. So some kids are being sheltered from it, but then it's still hard to censor them from everything.
I had cool parents. I watched movies that were way beyond my age range when I was a kid. Well, guess what? When I was in grammar school, I never beheaded someone because I watched Conan the Barbarian. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's a weird thought. I mean, kids don't emulate everything they see on TV. And in fact, people are talking about it now, the Roadrunner cartoons.
Exactly. How far are you going to take this?
Yeah, are you going to try to blow up a Roadrunner?
Drop an Acme weight on someone's head?
Yeah, I mean, that stuff was just... It was entertainment, and it was a cartoon, and I don't think I ever saw a Roadrunner in real life.
So the article does bring out some interesting points on both sides. I think this argument is going to go on forever because there's always parents looking to put the blame on something on the outside, but because this is TV Guide, the focus was on television. That's one of the things that we love about TV, though. It's an escapism, escape from reality. You see things that you'd never do, but to a degree, it's enjoyable watching.
Well, there are so many different types of shows on TV, and we know a lot of it's not made for kids. And now they have the TV ratings, the MA mature and the TV 14 ratings and things like that. So now there are more guidelines for it.
Back then, there wasn't. There wasn't even guidelines in movies. But your parents let you watch rated R movies when you were a kid.
I did see a few, yeah. I mean, I was in a small town, and where I grew up, the theater did have a time when they didn't let any kids see R-rated movies, and a time when they would let kids, if they were accompanied by an adult. So they went through some changes, but yeah, there were things like that. But my parents had Showtime, and I had a TV in my bedroom, so I could watch it.
You watch Showtime all the time.
Meet Major Matt Mason, Mattel's man in space and the bravest astronaut yet. He lives on the moon. We may all be there soon. And he gets around with a jet. Until Sergeant Storm in his red uniform, Major Matt worked all alone. Now, together, they face the dangers of space and seek to learn the unknown. The machines that they drive seem almost alive as they transport the adventurous pair. The new Astrotrack whips through the black, and Firebolt even goes where they meet Captain Laser, his space gear ablaze with energy stored from the stars. He's a giant, it's true, but a friendly one who spent his boyhood on Mars. An exciting place, the world of space, as all the astronauts know. This world is swell. Major Matt Mason, it's made by Mattel.
But 1968 overall had pretty healthy family fun shows. And let's talk about them.
I mean, yeah, I think their biggest focus was on family shows.
As we know, TV Guide always starts out on a Saturday. Why? I don't know. I think it's so strange. But, Kavora, if I were to come over your house with a box of cereal, can we watch Saturday morning cartoons together?
Oh, sure. Because I'm going to be watching them, so if you come over to my house, you got to watch them too.
Okay. A cereal that was introduced in 1968, Honey Munch cereal from Quaker. Would you like me to bring over some Honey Munch and have a couple bowls while watching cartoons?
Ooh, I think I'll try it, okay.
Now, this is going to be the Southern Ohio edition that we're reading from. It's interesting that the first thing in the morning, though, in Ohio, 5:50, was farm news.
Okay, well, I'm sure somebody watched it.
6:45, Davy and Goliath. I love that show. Anything claymation I watched. Linus cartoons. 8 o'clock, Captain Kangaroo, Fun for Everyone, or cartoons A Go-Go, High Flight, or King Kong. What would you watch?
Captain Kangaroo.
Okay, how about 8:30? Casper Carnival, Cool McCool, Weekend Classroom. No possible way I'm watching that.
Mm-mm.
Or Berry Patch.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe Casper, if that was about Casper the Ghost.
And then at 9 o'clock, Super 6, Casper, Frankenstein Jr., or Lucy's Toy Shop.
Casper. I used to like him.
I've never watched Frankenstein Jr., but since I'm at your house, can I watch Frankenstein Jr.?
No.
It's just like in real life now.
Yeah.
You control the TV. 9:30. This is when it starts getting really good. Fantastic Four, Super President, Herculoids, or Casper. I mean, what's up with the obsession with Casper?
Yeah, they had him on all morning, I guess.
I mean, Fantastic Four. I love that cartoon from the 60s.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Now, wait, you said something else that
And
was
Herculoids.
Good. Yeah, Herculoids.
That's another good one. That's
yeah,
tough.
they put those two good ones on at the same time, yeah.
All right, 10 o'clock. Flintstones, Spider-Man, Shazam, Job Show, or Quick Draw McGraw?
How about the Job Show?
Job Show? I don't even know what that is.
Okay, never mind.
I loved 60s Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Remember
was
the
cool.
theme song?
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Absolutely. 10:30, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Young Samson, or Space Ghost?
Space Ghost.
I agree. 11 o'clock, King Kong or Birdman?
Birdman.
How about 11:30, George of the Jungle, Adam Ant, Secret Squirrel, Superman, Aquaman?
You know, I remember looking at another one of these 60s things, and it had Adam Ant, and we're thinking, the singer?
We say that every time.
I know. Okay,
you don't
so
drink,
what,
don't
I
smoke,
know.
what do you do? Goody two-shoes.
I know.
I would watch Superman, Aquaman, definitely.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's a good combo. 12:30, Johnny Quest or Peter Gunn?
Johnny Quest.
1:30, Leave It to Beaver, Roadrunner, Hong Kong Mystery, When Strangers Meet, or Highway Patrol?
What was the first one?
Leave It to Beaver.
Oh, no, I think Roadrunner.
Okay. For the rest of the afternoon, it's a lot of repeat movies as well as sports.
Yeah, the afternoon, you know, cartoons are over then.
Mm-hmm. But at 5 o'clock, Twilight Zone. On a time machine trip to the past, Paul Driscoll discovers that life can't be beautiful for someone who knows what the future brings and can't do anything about it. Saturday evening, Ultraman is on at 6 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, I loved Ultraman.
The Monkees are on, as well as the Outer Limits. Outer Limits episode, a group of Earth people awake to find that they and the 6 city blocks they live on have been transported to another galaxy.
Sounds neat. Yeah, I mean, see, they actually did have those type of shows back then, the sci-fi thriller type of shows. I mean,
I love the
even though
descriptors, too.
Yeah, we've got a lot now, but they did have them back then.
The Saint. The best laid schemes. A girl's screams summon the Saint to a mystery surrounding the disappearance of fishing fleet owner. He supposedly drowned, but there are repeated indications that he has returned home. Starring Roger Moore. I love looking at early Roger Moore stuff. You could see why they picked him to be the James Bond of the 70s and 80s. Okay, here's a show that released in the United States that was British. The Prisoner. A Change of Mind. The prisoner must apply his entire will to resist a forced change of mentality. Drugs and ultrasonic waves directed against his brain are only part of the danger. An attractive woman has been conditioned to betray him. The Munsters is on at 8:30. Herman believes that he's contacted Mars with his ham radio.
Oh, wow. Herman contacted Mars. So they even had sci-fi on the Munsters. And see, I think this goes to, like, people being fascinated with space back then. And anytime there was a hint of an alien from outer space, he was always called a Martian.
That is true.
On those old shows, yeah.
Okay, repeat of Star Trek at 11 o'clock. The Deadly Years. Sudden senility attacks top officers of the Enterprise who contracted a strange aging disease on the planet Gamma Hydra 4. Sunday morning. Sunday morning is primarily religious programs. I mean, it's just one after another after another.
And that continued for years, yes.
Mm-hmm. Couple cartoons, though. 9:30, Milton the Monster.
I mean, Sunday wasn't really a big cartoon day for me.
Not at all.
And you still think people back then didn't watch TV as much as we do now. It's usually considered that people now sit in front of the TV all the time. Or their computer, but something... Streaming TV shows of course now there's the streaming and binging TV shows all the time.
Sunday evening though, programming picks up. 6 o'clock, The Green Hornet. Green Hornet and Kato come to the aid of tavern owners. I watched The Green Hornet. I didn't like it as much as Batman. I like Batman way better. At 7 o'clock, Lassie. Were you a Lassie fan?
I watched a little of it, but yeah, not a lot.
Time Tunnel, Tony and Doug materialize near ancient Troy.
Another sci-fi show.
I liked it. James Darren in there.
Yes.
Gentle Ben at 7:30. Did you watch that? I did.
I was trying to think, what was the other
Clint
show
Howard
with the
was
bear?
in that.
Oh yeah, Clint Howard. Oh, Grizzly Adams,
Mm-hmm.
the show in the 70s. I used to watch that one, yeah.
Ed Sullivan Show at 8 o'clock. Guest Eddie Albert, Vincent Price.
On the Ed Sullivan Show.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing he had all those people that were famous or that became famous.
Advertisement for Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison. Imagine an album recorded inside a prison. Some people may buy it just to hear the audience. Now here's a show. When I was younger, I loved Glenn Campbell. There's actually a close-up spotlight on this. 9 o'clock, The Glenn Campbell Show. This summer series' final hour is a country music concert. Performers Johnny Cash with the Tennessee Three, the Stoneman Family. Great combination there. Johnny Cash and Glenn Campbell.
Oh yeah, two great country singers. And I loved those, you said the close-up, like the TV guy doing those close-ups that focused on something. Those were always fun to read. And yeah, because how I said, I used to spend a lot of time reading through TV guides.
11:30 at night, Johnny Carson Show with guests Tony Bennett, Phyllis Diller, Carl Reiner.
All famous people, wow.
Mm-hmm. Monday morning, 5:50, Farm News. Lots of news programming, exercise programming.
No, I did some of that too, some of the exercise stuff.
Phil Donahue was on back then. Remember how big of a personality he was?
Yeah, in the 80s.
Beverly Hillbillies was on at 10:30. Andy Griffith Show at 11 o'clock.
You see, now we're getting into the shows I liked.
Bewitched. Mm-hmm. You're a huge Bewitched fan.
Yeah.
Character actor Henry Jones plays a leprechaun looking for a lost pot of gold.
Okay.
Dick Van Dyke Show. I had such a crush on Laura Petrie when I was a kid. 12 o'clock. Bewitched. Darren's uncle is coming for a visit, and Samantha is warned that he is kind of eccentric. Jeopardy at 12 o'clock.
And Jeopardy, wow, it's been on since then.
And at noontime, we always know it for dinner time. Merv Griffith Show. Toady Fields. Dennis the Menace at 4 o'clock. Mike Douglas Show at 4:30. Leave It to Beaver at 4:30. Merv Griffin, the repeat.
A lot of this is just like watching TV in the 70s too. I mean, a lot of the same shows, like that. These shows lasted so long.
And a lot of these are repeats, like I Love Lucy at 5:30. That I remember watching I Love Lucy all the time in repeats.
Yes,
growing
yeah.
up.
Back then it's like there were only a handful of shows that they could keep repeating. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Three Stooges at 5:30. Dennis the Menace. Superman. In this first of a two-part story, workmen discover unworldly creatures in the center of the earth. Flintstones at 6 o'clock at night. Flintstones was the Simpsons of the 60s. It's pretty amazing that was
popular,
considered prime-time evening programming.
Well, it wasn't controversial like The Simpsons, though. The Flintstones, and actually, if you watch it, the Flintstones had some really good character moments, some stories about marriage and about friendships. I mean, it was a cool show.
It was loosely based on The Honeymooners.
Oh, really?
And they decided, the producers of Jackie Gleason decided not to pursue it. He figured he'd just drop it and just take it for the compliment that it was. Gilligan's Island at 6:30. Hope stirs in the hearts of the shipwrecked citizens when Gilligan stumbles on a vintage airplane.
Yeah, I loved Gilligan's Island, yeah.
7 o'clock, I Dream of Jeannie. 7 o'clock would be a hard time picking which show to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because I Dream of Jeannie, NASA's first couple on the moon project, takes on frightening dimensions for Tony when Jeannie's sister horns in for some interplanetary hanky-panky. Also, at the same time slot, Twilight Zone. Although he despises his greedy heirs, dying millionaire Jason Foster summons them to his home for a last meeting. And I Love Lucy. Lucy and Ethel tried to show their superior knowledge of French. 3 great shows on at the same time.
Yeah, and people didn't have, VCRs back then or DVR. You couldn't record one and watch another.
I would switch back and forth during the commercials.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what you would have to do. Just keep changing the channel. And no remote control, so you gotta go get up and walk to the TV. Yeah, the kids are the remote control, right? And people really only had one TV per family back then, instead of having like a TV in different rooms or something like that.
Mm-hmm. There's an ad in the middle of the magazine for 11 free records right now, and you get to choose. It's one of those things, you buy one and you get 11. This is the Columbia Record Club.
So was that one of those stiff cardboard pages?
Mm-hmm. What did you used to do with the TV guide when you got those in the middle?
I would tear them out because they made it harder to flip through.
Tuesday morning. Now, 8:30 in the morning, Jack LaLanne. Do you remember that guy? The fitness guru?
Yes, because he was still popular in the 70s.
My mother loved anything that Jack LaLanne did. Like he predated Richard Simmons.
Oh yeah.
He was the one that everyone looked to for health advice. Tons of repeats here. Bewitched. Samantha's witchcraft threatens to upset Darren's delicate relations with an important client. The Hollywood Squares. At 11:30. Cain Ballard, Nanette Fabry, Zsa Zsa Gabor, George Hamilton, Paul Lynde.
Hollywood Squares was a fun show. And of course, and now people take it and do their own version of it too, like they did on the Star Trek cruise and other things.
Tuesday at 4 o'clock, Dark Shadows, in color.
Oh, in color. That was another thing back then. Not everyone had color TVs yet.
And it's highlighting which shows are in color and which shows are in black and white.
And that was the thing about Star Trek. They wanted it to be in color. And that's another reason they had such vibrant colors on the show.
7 o'clock, Twilight Zone, The Lonely. Sentenced to 50 years in an uninhabited planet, a convict is given a robot as a companion. Love that episode. 8:30, The French Chef. Now this is a show that my grandmother loved watching. Julia Child shows how to make souffle and hollandaise sauce. She was extremely talented, Julia Child. She's an amazing person.
I don't think I ever saw her, but I did watch, cooking shows from time to time. Oh, and back then, too, they cooked everything from scratch, which is different from now, where you have so much instant stuff.
11 o'clock at night, Alfred Hitchcock. Businessman Mort Bonner finds a burglar in his living room and is amazed when the man offers him money if he'll let him go. Captain Kangaroo was on it at 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning as well.
I think it came on every morning, didn't it? It became a weekly morning show. Weekday morning show.
Dialing for Dollars. It's another one that was around the same time. Treasure Island, another game show. Beverly Hillbillies. Martians get a taste of hillbilly-style hospitality. Like you said, Martians.
Yeah, Martians.
11:30, Bewitched. Samantha clashes with a man who says that witches are really neurotic bores.
Well, it's a man who didn't know real witches. He was just talking about women that he called witches because he didn't like them.
Superman's on again at 5:30. A famous sapphire and a strange poison await anyone who opens an ancient Egyptian box. What'd you think about that era of Superman?
It was fun. It was another thing I used to watch in reruns. It was very tame, wasn't it? It was just, it was a kid's show.
Our Superman was Christopher Reeves.
Yes.
And I remember my father saying, yeah, that Superman's a sissy boy Superman. He's not a real Superman.
Which one? Like, Christopher Reeves?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, nah, that's the fat old Superman. I don't like that black and white Superman.
I mean, the George Reeves Superman was, he wasn't as handsome, but he was still
more
still
rugged.
The do-gooder. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he was, but he only had, he didn't have real villains. They were like bank robbers and
gangsters and stuff. Yeah.
Humans.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have Brainiac or anything.
But they could have, because they had him in the comics back then.
I don't know, how easy would that have been? They could have done that. Even Lex Luthor.
They could have, yeah. I don't know why. I guess they didn't want to.
I never understood that. I mean, you gotta look at, Batman had fantastic villains on the show.
Right.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that Superman TV show with George Reeves didn't have one awesome villain. None that are memorable.
I mean, I guess it's because maybe they couldn't get the rights from the comics. It still could have been that kind of thing, but
I can't imagine why. Hey, 7 o'clock. Twilight Zone. Wagon Master Chris Horn goes on a search for water and finds, instead, a whole new world. 7:30 at night. Blue Hawaii.
Elvis
Presley stars as a young man who refuses to work on his family's pineapple business. Having spent 2 years in the Army, he wants to be a tourist guide and live the easy life. Songs include Hawaiian Wedding Song, Can't Help Falling in Love, Rockahula Baby, and the title tune. My mother loved Blue Hawaii. I've seen that many times. Thursday. Some game shows going on Thursday. 1 o'clock, Truth or Consequences.
Yeah, that was still on in the 70s.
5 o'clock at night, Mr. Ed. And Father Knows Best.
Oh, I loved Father Knows Best. With Spock's mother, Jane Wyatt.
McHale's Navy. Bewitched. Boy, Bewitched reruns were super popular at this time. It's on multiple times a day.
Yeah, and they do that with some shows. I mean, because like in the 70s, I remember Happy Days being on all the time.
Paul Lynde was on an episode. The arrival of Mad Uncle Arthur seals Darren's decision to give up and let the witches take over. But the kindly Arthur has a scheme to snap Darren out of it.
Yeah, Paul Lynde became a recurring character on Bewitched, yeah.
10:30 on Thursday night, the Nashville Sound.
Nashville. Which was what? It was probably country, right?
Doesn't say. It's just a musical show. Friday morning, 11 o'clock, Andy Griffith. Opie and his friends get into mischief at an old haunted house. Friday evening at 8:30. So this is another rerun. Star Trek. A piece of the action. The Enterprise visits a planet whose culture is patterned after Chicago's gangland society of the 20s. Swamped in a morass of machine guns and criminal mores, Kirk and his boys feel compelled to come on like gangbusters.
Okay. Yeah, a great episode. And, on that one, they found something that was like a culture on Earth's past. But at least they had an explanation for it, for why the people were that way.
10:30 at night, the Nashville Sound. So that must have been a late-night music show that was coming on numerous times throughout the week in 1968. Some shows that weren't on that particular week that we enjoyed watching during that time period also included Candid Camera. My family loved watching Candid Camera together. Doctor Who. Second Doctor was on during this time period.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a show that goes a long way back, too.
Gomer Pyle USMC.
One of my favorite shows. And it was a spin-off of the Andy Griffith Show.
Green Acres. Here's Lucy. Mission Impossible. My Three Sons, The Carol Burnett Show, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, and Land of the Giants. Shows that ended this year include The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Prisoner, Lost in Space, The Lucy Show, Batman, Speed Racer, The Gumby Show, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Monkees.
Yeah, all of those shows that were made back then that people still know today. Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.